Every one of them is going to have a hearing, a fair process, and then what they're going to have is a timely vote in the United States Senate.
The inauguration is January 20th. With me now is CTV News political analyst Eric Ham. Hello to you, Eric. So Matt Gaetz exiting, taking himself basically out of this whole process was Trump's first loss. Do you think with him out now, there will be renewed scrutiny on some of his more controversial picks like Pete Hegseth, Tulsi Gabbard, and RFK Jr.?
Yeah, so those controversies and the problems that each one of those candidates brings certainly doesn't go away because Matt Gaetz decided to withdraw from the nominating process. In fact, I think the scrutiny on each of those individuals will only grow more difficult. And I think what we're seeing right now is that scrutiny, particularly on Pete Hegseth and Tulsi Gabbard, is going to become much more intense. And now that Matt Gaetz has already withdrawn, the question becomes, do Republican senators feel more emboldened, or are they willing to actually move all of Donald Trump's nominations through the process very, very quickly? Now, given the fact that what we're seeing right now with the war in Ukraine and tensions in the Middle East, I think this Hegseth nomination, which clearly they're working overtime to try to get him over the finish line, that I think could be the next big hurdle for the incoming Trump administration.
So as you rightly point out, Republicans, some of them expressing concern about fast tracking or using recess appointments. Does this show the system is working? I mean, some Republicans obviously willing to put themselves at odds with Trump in favor of respecting the process?
Well, I think it all really doesn't show how much these senators are willing to actually buck Donald Trump unless we actually see them have to take very difficult votes. And clearly, given the fact that Donald Trump was willing to stand down so quickly on Matt Gaetz, suggests that perhaps he has been, like other presidents, is willing to actually course correct. Now, will he be willing to do that on a number of other nominees? It's unclear at this time. But what we are seeing here is, even though there are some very controversial picks, as you mentioned, people like Pam Bondi and, of course, Donald Trump, Commerce and Treasury Secretary. These are individuals that perhaps might not have as much scrutiny, even though all of these candidates certainly are going to go through a very thorough vetting by the U.S. Senate.
Well, let's talk a little bit more about Pam Bondi, because I said in the introduction that by some accounts she's considered a safer choice, but she's going to have some difficulty answering questions under oath about the last election. Isn't she, Eric? And her views on whether or not Trump won?
Well, I think because where Donald Trump actually gets some cover, I think, in all of this is the fact that you have Republicans who are clearly in the majority. And so irrespective of what they may think about many of these nominees, if Donald Trump has the 51 votes to actually move all of these nominees through, I think he will actually do that irrespective of just how problematic these nominees are. Now, where it will become potentially problematic for him is, of course, many of these senators, Republicans, who are taking these very difficult votes, if in fact they get that far. They do have to look just a short 2 years down the line when many of these senators will be defending seats and, of course, will have to defend these very controversial votes.
Yeah, she was very public about thinking that, saying that the election was rigged. I want to ask you lastly about the concerns that are growing around the mass deportations, which Trump promises will begin on day one, regardless of cost. How do you think this promise is going to play out?
This is still, I think, a huge issue that the incoming Trump administration simply hasn't figured out. Now, we know that Donald Trump is saying that he is going to use the military. But again, how, in fact, do you actually find these individuals? And more importantly, how do you find the money to deport them, not to mention what this might mean for the economy to deport 11 million people? We have to remember, in Donald Trump's entire first 4 years in office, he was able to deport 1.5 million people from this country. And that included many of those who were actually at the border who they simply turned away. Now what Donald Trump is actually attempting to do is remove 11 million people who are already in the United States. And we still haven't seen a fulsome plan as to how he plans to do that.
Eric Ham for us tonight. Eric is our CTV News political analyst. Thanks so much for your time with us.